Hello there. My name is Jasom Jensai. Welcome to stream number 25, where we're going to be discussing episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, the philosophy of the Sith, and why are Sith eyes yellow, and also why are Count Dooku's eyes not yellow, and all that kind of stuff. But before we get into all of that, let's start with the question in the stream. What does Lando mine on Bespin, or Cloud City? What is the product that he is mining from the atmosphere? So if you know the answer to that, I believe it's only mentioned in one line. But if you do know the answer to that, leave a chat with that answer to potentially get 10 points. You quick go over the rules. You only get one guess. Only the first person to get it right gets the points, and you can't look it up. So pretty simple rules. Leave your guesses in the chat. But let's move on to the first topic, which is all about The Empire Strikes Back. Hang on, my computer is... Okay, there we go. And because of... So basically I hit the record button because, I post these videos. I post these videos afterwards. So to do that, I hit the record button, mid-segment, right? So I hit the record button and it, wasn't loading at all. And then I started, trying to explain why I had just paused for, a full, 5 seconds or whatever. And then it started recording. And obviously I can't have that at the beginning of my video, so let's try this again. Sorry for the wait. So The Empire Strikes Back is seen as one of the best Star Wars movies, if not the best, by pretty much everyone. And even the people who are oh yeah, it's not my favorite, they acknowledge, well, it's pretty much the best, even though it's not my favorite. Or at least that's what I've heard. I mean, I'm sure some other people may have heard differently, so leave what you hear people say a lot in the comments, but at least that's what I hear, is that Empire Strikes Back is clearly the best Star Wars film ever made. So I'm kind of excited to do a review on this because, I don't know, it's a good movie, and I feel like I just kind of agree with everyone, but it's still, I want to give my thoughts on this. So let's start by just going through the characters and talking about character development and all that kind of cool stuff. So let's start with Han Solo and Leia. Actually, let's do a quick dissection of the plot. So it starts out, they're all together on Hoth, and big battle where the Empire actually wins and puts the rebellion on the back foot. Then Luke splits off, goes to Dagobah. Han and Leia and everyone else splits off, go to everywhere else. And they all meet back up in the end for the final battle on Bespin. So that's kind of the main idea of it is big battle at the start, kind of sets everything in motion. Then they split off and they have all those side adventures and they come together on Bespin and the heroes lose in the end, which is a great choice in my opinion. Very bold for the time with the heroes. I mean, they survive, but that's about it. So let's get back to talking about Han Solo and Leia and all their character development. So Han Solo, honestly, their romance is not as good as I think most people think. It is it's good in the later half of the film, but in the start, it's kind of cringy, to be honest, at least to me. With Han constantly being you know you love me, and it's Leia's clearly signaling that she's not interested, and he's clearly signaling that he doesn't care. And I just feel even though Leia did actually love him, I guess, I feel like he probably should have respected that she was basically telling him, "Hey, I'm not interested, go away." I don't know. So it's a bit awkward for me to watch. I don't know. But other than that, their whole relationship was developed pretty well. It's nothing super special. I feel like Star Wars has never been good at romance. Other than some books like Lost Stars, has good romance, but I feel like Star Wars just Anakin and Padme, of course. That's probably what you're thinking of when I say Star Wars doesn't have good romance. But even Han and Leia is it's only decent. And maybe that's just me being not that much into romance. But I don't know. As for Han, outside of his character development with Leia, there's honestly not that much. I mean, we get to see he stayed with the rebellion, but that's kind of last movie's character development. Um, he sacrifices himself, I guess, to go into the carbonite. Not much of a sacrifice. He didn't really have a choice, but I don't know. He didn't seem to change that much. He didn't have much character development, which is totally fine for a Han Solo type character. Like, uh, a character kind of similar, Lando, or not Lando, Hondo Onaka. He doesn't change ever, and I'm very glad about that, because, like, if he changed, then he wouldn't be he wouldn't be the greatness that he is, I guess. It's better if he doesn't change. And Han Solo, I think, is not quite that. He's not quite at that level. He's still like a main character, hero type character who deserves some character development. But like, I would want more character development from like Luke than from a Han Solo type character. So that's my thoughts on Han Solo. As for Leia, it's kind of the same thing. I feel like she could have gotten a bit more character development. In this movie, she's kind of just the princess who gets taken along with the scoundrel, and they go on adventures together. There's not much there outside of Leia just having the Leia personality. Like, don't get me wrong, she's still a good character, but there's not much change, not much growth. And she's only a good character because she has a lot of character. Whereas someone like, let's go over to Luke. Luke is a great character in this movie because not only does he have some character, not as much as Leia and Han. I feel like they're more charismatic. But Luke has more character development. So he goes from, sure, he's like a hero of the rebellion, and he can like force pull stuff with his mind, and that's pretty incredible. But after the movie, he goes to being able to fight reasonably well against Darth Vader. And sure, he gets easily beaten, but that's also part of his character development in that he does still fail. Like, this is not the end of his character development. And it nearly was, but he survived. So there is episode 6. Boom. Take that, Vader. So yeah, speaking of Vader, there's another interesting relationship in this movie, and that is between Luke and Vader. With Vader's reveal that Luke is Vader's son. And the whole movie, Vader is like choking out his officers. He's like totally like he's just so commanding, I guess. He's like hunting after Han, he's hunting after Luke, he's hunting after everyone. He's very ruthless. He manipulates Lando, he alters the deal, and you kind of get to see that he is not a good guy. Meanwhile, Luke is on Dagobah, and he's like worrying about his fight with Vader, I guess. He's like, you can tell that he sees Vader as this bad guy, which of course he is being a bad guy, so it makes sense. And then you get to the I am your father scene, and it throws everything for like, wow, like, and honestly, to me, that reveal is not as impactful as it could have been because I just kind of grew up knowing that Vader was Luke's father. So that reveal didn't have an impact, like, in a moment. I can't, like, think back to a time and be like, and that was the moment where I heard, no, I am your father. But it's still an impactful line in the story, and it still has not just ramifications for this movie, but also the previous movies, and even episode 6. And you could say the prequels and the sequels too, but more looking at the original trilogy specifically, that line is very impactful, very important, and can I just take a second to say, very well delivered, just like all of James Earl Jones' lines. Obviously, the storytelling is important, but also it's a movie, so the acting, the special effects, all of that has to be good, and it was very good in this movie. There is probably some stuff you could look at and be like, well, that's not a very good effect, but I mean, it's made in 1980 or something, so it's an old movie, and it still looks good. Yeah, I mean, it's believable enough for me, which honestly isn't saying that much. I look at any movie and pretty much believe it, but I like Star Wars, and I'm willing to look past a little bit of jerky stop motion movements to enjoy the story. Another character I want to talk about is Yoda. And Yoda is another excellent character. He's actually introduced in this movie. Um, I kind of love his introduction. He shows up and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I'm looking for someone." And by the way, my Yoda voice is like terrible, so I'm not going to even try anymore. But he's like, Luke is like, "Well, I'm looking for someone," and Yoda's like, "Found someone you have, I would say." And it's like, well, that's a good point. Right. Like Luke's like basically like, "Oh great, this guy's crazy." Um, and then he's like trying to get to Yoda. He's like super impatient, and that was the test. And I'm sure if I had seen this, like, if I hadn't seen that Empire Strikes Back 4 and I just rewatched it, that would be another thing where it's like, oh, that's such a big reveal. But to me, Yoda's just always been Yoda. So it's cool to see him like toying with Luke. Um, but yeah, even like when this first came out, I can only imagine seeing that and being like, geez, this guy is so annoying. When are we going to get to Yoda? And then it's like, I cannot teach him. He has no patience. And then you hear Obi-Wan is like, he will learn patience. Or whatever the line is. I haven't seen... I saw the movie last week, not this week, so it's not fresh in my mind like usual. But, I like those lines. I see them a lot. I think I got them right. But yeah, anyways. Like, that must have been such a good reveal. Little did they know there was a better one later in the movie. But yeah, Yoda, I mean... And it's not just his character, like, not just the comedy as well. It's the lessons he teaches about how the Force works. Some of the things in here is like, Luke is like, I don't believe it. And Yoda's like, that is why you fail. And then also like, size matters not. And do or do not, there is no try. Like, all these things kind of lead me to speculate about a lot of crazy stuff in the Force. Like, is there a limit? Like, if size matters not, then like why don't Jedi like throw moons at each other? And if like the reason Luke fails, like the only reason he fails is because he doesn't believe it, then why aren't Jedi like just believing that they can throw moons at each other and then throwing moons? And then what's the last line? I mentioned one other one. It was I forgot. Whatever. Basically, there's a lot of stuff in here that makes you think. And then it's also not just that. There's also like all this stuff about the living force and forces all around you. And it's just kind of, even though Obi-Wan's line in A New Hope, the force is an energy field created by all living things that surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the galaxy together, or whatever it was. That line gives a pretty good summary of the force. Yoda adds a bit more, I guess, tidbits in there to kind of explain the force in more detail. Which is stuff I love, and it's not like he's like explaining it like textbook explanation type stuff, so it doesn't bother me in that sense. But yeah, I like looking at the Force and trying to see how it works. That stuff is very interesting to me. So yeah, we covered Han, Leia, Luke, Yoda, Vader, also Boba Fett. I mean, he looks cool. He's great. I don't know if you've... I don't know. I've probably mentioned this a few times. I'm not the biggest fan of Boba Fett. Especially before The Mandalorian. Like, and I think it's not so much that I didn't like him as it was that I didn't like how much other people liked him and kind of overcompensated for that, I would say. Because, I mean, what does he even do? He tracks down Han Solo. Pretty impressive, but not really any combat skill. Then he shoots once at Luke. He talks to Vader menacingly. He gets reprimanded for disintegrations or something. And then in episode 6, he does this super clumsy offensive against Luke and then gets knocked into the Sarlacc pit by a blind man. And then everyone's like, wow, this character is so cool. He could take on he's the best bounty hunter ever. And it's like, he's so crazy. I just didn't see the evidence there. And it's like, sure, he looks cool, but you're judging him based on how he looks. And that's kind of the feeling I had towards those big Boba Fett fans, which in hindsight is probably not just cruel, but also probably a bit misguided because he is one of the best bounty hunters. Even if he loses to a Jedi Knight, lots of bounty hunters lose to Jedi Knights. That's not that surprising. And he's still impressive. One bad day doesn't mean he's terrible. And obviously, Legends and the comics and all that stuff made him like way more powerful. So it totally makes sense that people would believe that even when Legends is erased, they can't really erase the hype around him, which I would love to imagine is like this total like in universe thing where everyone is like so scared of Boba Fett, and he's like, sure, he's like the best bounty hunter, but like people are way more scared of him, even than in our universe. Like his reputation is just the biggest thing. And then of course Mandalorian comes out, season 2, and we get to see Boba Fett do some more fighting. And I felt they did a pretty good job with that. Uh, Obviously, there was no way they would make him as weak as he was in like episode 6. That just was not going to happen. And he's had time to like train himself to get better, I guess. I don't know. But also he just seemed to have more advantages. Like in episode 6, he had a bad day. Like, let's be honest, his tactics there were awful, and that cost him like a lot. So I think he learned from that. And it's not like he's fighting Jedi in The Mandalorian, so he's gonna look a lot cooler. But yeah, that's enough about Boba Fett. I mean, if you want to hear more, leave a comment with the chat. I'd love to hear from you and help continue the conversation. Because after all, I am here for the conversation. Talking to a microphone isn't that fun. Like, let's be honest. But yeah, anyways. Moving on, let's talk about the planets. I love the planets in this movie. It's great. You got Hoth, classic planet. It's covered in snow. So I like snow. It's cool. And there's also like the Tauntauns and the Wampas. It's a cool place. Then you have Dagobah, which I love Dagobah. It's a maybe I wouldn't want to live there. And I know Yoda's like, my home this is. Yeah, but like it's an interesting planet to at least to see in movies. Then there's Bespin, which great idea. Like a city in the clouds, gas giant. That's a cool idea. Then there's where else? I guess just asteroids and stuff. Yeah, just a lot of cool places in this movie. Spaceships, they're the same as usual. AT-ATs. Of course, I don't know. I don't know what more to say about The Empire Strikes Back. If you've been sticking along with this video, thank you so much for watching. If you've got anything to add, leave a chat, or if you're watching the video, not the live stream, leave a comment, and I'd love to respond to you. Yeah, I guess there's a lot more to say about this movie, but I don't know, it's just not fresh in my memory. I don't know how important that's going to be to you guys, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. But you guys who are watching the live stream, I'm going to keep live streaming and move on to the next segment, which is all about the philosophy of the Sith. So the Sith Order is obviously the opposite of the Jedi Order in many ways. And so I made a video recently about the way of the Jedi. Like, what is the way of the Jedi? How do I see it? Because I mean, there is a lot of conflicting viewpoints. Some say, oh, the way of the Jedi is, well, it used to be this, but now it's flawed, and now it's all one-sided. It's the light side. But it's supposed to be balanced, right? And then there's this other viewpoint that's like, well, no, it's all supposed to be the light side. It's not, you're overcomplicating it way too much. And I do fall into the camp of you're overcomplicating it way too much. So, yeah, there's a lot of viewpoints on the way of the Jedi. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. But for now, let's talk about the philosophy of the Sith. So specifically, I want to talk about mostly the Rule of Two era Sith, because at least in canon, we don't really know that much about the Sith before the Rule of Two. In fact, like, I'm not even sure, like, most people do. Like, in Legends, yes, the Rule of Two was started right at the very end between like Darth Vader started the rule of two, and boom, the Sith were gone from the galaxy. But then how does Yoda know to talk about the rule of two with Windu? I don't remember where I heard this, but somewhere I heard that George Lucas's original plan, and take this with a massive grain of salt, call it a boulder of salt, but I heard George Lucas's original plan was that the rule of two was going to have existed like long before like the Jedi fully took over and thought they destroyed the Sith and stuff. And that would be how they knew of the Sith, which I think is a great idea. You wouldn't necessarily have to have only two Sith, but what you could do is you could have like a master and apprentice of Sith, and then there's like 100 of those, but they're all independent, which would make a lot more sense because then it's like, well, they're kind of separate, which makes sense based on the philosophy of the Sith, which is very self-serving. And sure, you need the master and the apprentice, so you do have to do some service just so you can learn. But that's about it. And maybe they would form larger groups, but I think that's an interesting idea that I highly doubt they'll explore. I'm very certain, like 95% certain, that whenever Disney gets around to exploring the Old Republic, they're going to give us massive battles with 100 Sith versus 100 Jedi and who wins, right? That's what everyone wants. Not what I want, but I feel like you could do both. You could do some of that before, some of that in between, some rule of two stuff, and rule of two stuff near the end. And then eventually Darth Bane goes into hiding with like the final rule of two when there's just two, like one master, one apprentice. But that whole rant over, let's talk about the philosophy of the Sith. So the Sith are primarily selfish. That is like the main way I would describe them. The other thing I would mention is their passion. Let's actually go through the Sith code, and let me see if I can remember this. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Yeah, I think that's it. Through power, I gain victory. I believe that's it. And then it's like, through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. It's something like that. Basically, passion leads to power and leads to victory and freedom, basically. That is the ideal of the Sith, according to, I believe that is only in Legends. They might have mentioned that in canon. I'm not sure. But even if it is just in Legends, they're definitely going to be pulling some of that from Legends and bringing it into canon. So let's start with looking at passion and strength and power and all that. How does that connect? Personally, I don't think that passion leads to strength as much as the Sith believe. Like, sure, it can be a good motivator, but at the same time, it can also be a distraction. If you're really passionate about, let's say like in Anakin's case, he's really passionate about Padme. What if Padme survived and like he wasn't burned and stuff? Well, then his passion could become a weakness if he got distracted. Like, so Palpatine would probably get rid of Padme. Even though his passion is supposedly giving him strength, it's also a weakness. So there is always that to keep in mind. Then through that strength you gain from passion, you gain power. Again, I'm not so sure. If you're motivated by passion, then like your strength might go up in your determination, but your intelligence might drop down a bit because you're not making decisions based on logic, you're making it based on passion. So I feel like the Sith Order is flawed, but I still feel like it is good to take a look at it anyways. So the Sith are passionate. They believe passion leads to power, which I guess kind of makes sense in a way. And then through that power, they can gain strength and freedom and victory, all that kind of stuff. So the Sith are selfish. They want their own victory. They want their own freedom. And they don't care what happens at the cost of others. Let's look at like Sidious, for example. I would say he's probably one of the least passionate Sith, and also one of the most successful, just something to note there. But I feel like his passion is kind of overshadowed by his cunningness and his selfishness and his greed, right? Like, he becomes the emperor of the galaxy, through so much cunning. But like, who does he hate? He hates the Jedi, I guess, but like, that's just because they're gonna destroy him. So that hate is motivated by his lust for power. Who else does he hate? Probably Mace Windu. I don't know, but again, it's like he's a Jedi. He's going to be against Palpatine no matter what. So Palpatine's passion is almost always determined by like his logic, I guess, which is kind of not too much like a Sith in most cases. But the other thing to keep in mind with Sith is it's not like they're all one order. They're not always in agreement. There are a lot less of them, so there's probably more agreement among the Sith than among the Jedi. But per person, there's probably a lot more disagreement just because of the nature of their order. They're a lot more selfish. They're a lot more individualistic. They're a lot more passionate and chaotic. So naturally, they're going to be much more different. Point in case, like, let's look at this. Count Dooku. Compare that to Palpatine. Compare that to, like, Vader. They're all very, very different. Whereas compare Obi-Wan to Yoda to Mace Windu. Sure, there's differences, but they're a lot more similar. So not only are the Sith, I guess, selfish and passionate, but they're also very unique. They're focused on, they don't focus on order as much as they focus on chaos. They're very free thinking. I would guess in most cases. And those are some good things, some bad things. But yeah, moving on, let's talk about Count Dooku, right? He's a Sith. But like, honestly, Count Dooku is kind of a strange Sith. Like, he doesn't seem that angry all the time. He doesn't have this crazy backstory with like dead parents and stuff. I mean, he kind of does, but like, he grew up as a Jedi, so like, dead parents is It's, like, don't get me wrong, there has been hardship in his life. He's had challenges, but it's not like Anakin, where he lost everything, was burned, and all that stuff. It's not like Maul, where he was chopped in half, or Maul, who was trained from the age of a child to be a Sith. Count Dooku is kind of just this former Jedi turned leader of the Separatists who serves Palpatine and occasionally gets Sith eyes as he mercilessly kills people. I think one of the reasons Count Dooku is a Sith, like, that is more, or one of his philosophies that is more in line with the Sith, is his mercilessness. He does not care about others like one bit. I mean, maybe a little bit. Maybe certain people. Like, maybe Ventress. But even Ventress, he's like, yeah, well, Sidious is gonna hurt me if I don't get rid of you, so goodbye, and you're dead. Like, and he said, he, like, contacted her with a completely straight face. I do feel like he cared a bit, but, I mean, like, it's his own good. He's not gonna risk his own good for her good. And so mercilessness, I think, is one of the things that is in line with the Sith for him. Which mercilessness ultimately stems from selflessness, in most cases. Or selfishness, I should say. So yeah, and then there's also in the, what is it called? The book with Asajj and Quinlan Vos. Like, blanking on the name. Why am I blanking on the name of this book? It's a really good book. You should definitely read it. Dark Disciple. That's what it's called. At the very beginning of that book, he's like responsible for the slaughter of like this entire like ship of people. Like I believe it's almost like extinction. And it's been a while since I read the book, or rather listened to it, because I do audiobooks. But like, that is merciless. Like, he mercilessly destroyed them. Then of course there's the whole war. I mean, he's profiting off of a war. He's very merciless. I feel like I've stressed that point enough. But he's not, he's like Palpatine in that he's not overly passionate. He's not controlled by his passions as much. But let's remedy talking about that by talking about Vader and Maul. Let's do Vader first. Let's do Maul first. So Maul was, like, I don't know if it's canon, but at least in Legends, he was basically became a Sith, like, at the same time as Jedi. So super young. Like, he barely has memories of his previous life. So, like, he's always grown up being taught to hate, taught to, like, feed on his anger. And you see that in his fight with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And even before that, you see in comics and all that kind of stuff. But specifically in the movies, you see that a lot with his expression and his fighting style. But one of the big keys of this is his like when the laser door is closed, and they're all like just waiting there, and you see Obi-Wan standing at the far end, and he's kind of like bouncing up and down, ready to go, ready to rush in and like basically fight Maul. Then you've got Qui-Gon Jinn kneeling down, setting his lightsaber down, closed eyes, he's meditating. And then you have Darth Maul, and he's like pacing back and forth. He's glaring at Qui-Gon. He's like a caged animal. Like, he is so full of just pure hatred. And it's nothing against specifically Qui-Gon. Like, it is something against the Jedi. He does, there's a comic where he gets like a vision of like Jedi killing a bunch of Sith or something. And he basically just gets filled with this hatred for Jedi. So he does have a hatred for Jedi. But this hatred isn't like personal like that. He's like fostering in himself artificially in addition to his hatred for Jedi, so that he can fuel himself with just so much passion to kill Qui-Gon Jinn. So yeah, and then that's just the beginning though, because after that he gets cut in half by Obi-Wan. He survives for like 10 years off of his hatred. Like, he builds himself like spidery legs. He survived. Like, what he did is crazy. And honestly, it doesn't really make much sense. But he had such good character development. I don't care. But yeah, after that, he was totally motivated by hatred, and unlike his hatred for the entire Jedi Order that he had before, now it's focused on one single person. So it becomes even more personal. And that's his hatred for Obi-Wan, of course. So yeah, that Maul. I love talking about Maul because he's got such an interesting, I guess, worldview, where like the only important thing is revenge, and he's gonna get revenge on Obi-Wan because Obi-Wan cut him in half, and then later he's gonna get revenge on Palpatine because Palpatine discarded him, like he didn't even need him anymore because really he didn't. He met Anakin, and it's like, Maul was pretty good, but this Anakin guy, I don't know. I like this guy. But yeah, anyways, and Maul is such an interesting character to look at. Always focused on getting revenge. He learned a lot from his master, as well, which I love to see, like in the Mandalore arc with him manipulating everyone. That was cool. He was basically like a mini Sidious in the underworld. And then, of course, in Rebels, he manipulates Ezra. That was cool to see. Just, man, I love talking about Maul. Leave your favorite Maul scene in the chat or in the comments. Like, what's your favorite scene with Darth Maul? And I probably shouldn't have asked that question because this is going to take me a second to come up with mine. Just off the top of the head, I'm going to go with when he kills Satine in front of Obi-Wan and just carries off to prison to suffer. That scene was very powerful. I love that. So yeah, I don't know. I might change in a couple hours or something. I'm not too set on that scene in particular. But yeah, leave your favorite scene in the chat or in the comments. What's your favorite Maul scene? So yeah, let's move on to Darth Vader and talk about like his, I guess, idea of the Sith. And originally, the reason he joined the Sith is to save Padme. Which really Anakin is the perfect person to study when talking about, like how I see the Sith at least. He's kind of the model I use to see the differences between the Sith and the Jedi. Because before, I mean, let's be honest, he wasn't a super attachmentless Jedi. Like, he wasn't even close to that ideal. But I mean, he was compassionate. He wasn't overly controlled by his attachments. Like, sure, he sometimes gave up missions for Obi-Wan or Ahsoka or even Padme, but like he didn't go way over the line like he did in Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, he was compassionate. He was very noble. He was very heroic, and he was pretty selfless as well. Like he doesn't seek like uh, glory for himself very much. He doesn't seek wealth. He doesn't seek I don't know, worldly possessions or anything like that. He wants what's best for others, and most important to him, which is going to lead me to my next point, is not what's most important for him, but what's most important for the people he loves, which in Revenge of the Sith proves to be just as big of a mistake. Like, which, I'll be honest, in most cases, it's probably a lot worse to be selfish than to be like want what's best for your loved ones. So don't hear me wrong here. But yeah, basically he gives up everything for Padme. He's completely blinded by his attachment to her, so much that he like kills younglings, and that's what loses her. Yeah, and like she shows up on Mustafar and she's like, "Well, you've changed. You're no longer like you did this all for me to save me, but in doing so you killed yourself and replaced yourself with this Darth Vader person." And that's like the perfect tragedy and kind of shows the futility of becoming a Sith, or I guess acting like a Sith. Um, at least in the sense of not selfishness, because obviously Palpatine got what he wanted for several years. Still not a good lifestyle. Let me be clear. You probably shouldn't start a war to gain political power, especially not a war as bad as the Clone Wars. But like Palpatine got what he wanted. Anakin did not get what he wanted. So yeah, like attachments are forbidden by the Jedi for a reason, because they can lead to the dark side, and they do lead to at least some sort of selfishness. It's not selfishness for yourself, but it's selfishly wanting what's best for the people you know rather than that random person. Like there's this age-old question like, would you rather kill like 10 random people that you don't know, or would you rather kill your parents? And it's like, well, that's a grim question, but like when you get down to it, what is technically the better option? And yet pretty much all of us would choose our parents, like, or to save our parents, I should say. Just because we have this attachment to them, even though technically it's like a 10 to 2. So, yeah, I don't know. But, yeah. So, I guess the philosophy of the Sith is it comes down to not attachments. It comes down to, like, passion and greed. Sith always do what's best. I shouldn't say always, especially not when talking about Sith. Sith, the ideal Sith, or I should say the Sith that perfectly follows the philosophy, always does what's best in their own self-interest, and they don't care at all about other people outside of what those other people can do for the Sith. And in addition, they are fueled by their passion a lot, and usually they're pretty cunning. They can control their passion, like Count Dooku or Sidious. Even Vader had a pretty firm grasp on his passion, and so he was pretty controlled as well. And honestly, even Maul at times, he was constantly fueled by his just desire to destroy Obi-Wan, but he didn't let that like blind him. He didn't like chase down Obi-Wan like just by himself. At least at first he did, of course, but after a while he realized that was not the best option, and so he lured him out with the Crisis on Mandalore, and then killed Satine in front of his eyes and made him suffer like Maul had suffered. And that was a pretty clever plan. But yeah, so Sith kind of usually control their passions, but at the same time, their passions are what makes them choose their core decisions. For example, Palpatine, I guess, what he most wanted was to rule the galaxy, to get rid of the Jedi. So that's what he did. Maul was just filled with vengeance towards Obi-Wan and later to Sidious. So he did everything in his power to destroy those two. And failed at both. But, good try, Maul. You chose some pretty big fish to catch. Then there's Vader, who is fueled by, I guess, his grief at losing Padme, his anger at the Jedi for taking Padme. He's fueled by emotion too. And Count Dooku, honestly, I'm not sure. Count Dooku, and I'll probably talk more about this. Count Dooku is a very different Sith. Oh, I also want to talk about Ventress and um, her whole, because technically she's not a Sith. Sure, she's a Sith apprentice, whatever. But at the same time, I think she does use the dark side, and therefore is at least similar to the philosophy of the Sith. So before, so actually, let me do a quick recap for those of you who don't know Ventress's whole backstory. Let me try to remember this. So, she was a Night Sister, and she got traded to some, like, basically she got traded into slavery on Rat Attack or something. I think it's Rat Attack. And she had to do, like, but eventually she gets freed by this Jedi. However, this Jedi is stranded on the planet. Like, no contact with the Jedi, no aid from the Jedi, just completely stranded on the planet. And so this Jedi realizes that she has the Force and trains her. And she kind of starts, at some point, the Jedi Master gets, like, killed by a bunch of thugs. And Ventress basically turns to the dark side, kills all of the criminals, and takes over, like, so I believe she takes over a, like, gladiator ring type thing. And is, like, the leader of that. So then she kind of turns to the dark side because obviously grief at losing your master, basically your father, is pretty powerful. So she turns to the dark side, at least, yeah, and she kind of starts to blame the Jedi for not helping to rescue her master. And then Count Dooku shows up and basically recruits her to the dark side to join him as Separatist, and she just follows along with that, and becomes his assassin for, I don't know, I think 2 or 3 years into the war. Then she's betrayed by Dooku, and instead of being filled with this hatred for the Jedi, she's filled with this hatred for Count Dooku, who betrayed her. Because honestly, her hatred of the Jedi was kind of indirect. It's like, well, you should have done this thing and you didn't. Whereas Count Dooku is like, well, you shouldn't have done this thing and you did do it. So it's like a passive, I guess, insult versus like a direct insult. Like, Count Dooku literally tried to do something, whereas the Jedi just didn't do something. I don't know. Tell me if that doesn't make any sense in the chat. Yeah, so then for the next, I guess, well, she does take a break. For the next little bit, she basically does everything in her power to get revenge on Count Dooku, which eventually ends up with her losing all of her Night Sisters to Count Dooku killing them. So she's even more upset than before, and even more, like, grief-stricken than before as well. So she kind of just gives up on everything and becomes a bounty hunter. And it's at this point where I think she deviates a lot from the Sith philosophy. A Sith, like Maul would double down and seek even more vengeance rather than just giving up and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to become a bounty hunter because I don't even know what to do. This guy he has just so much armies and all this kind of stuff at his disposal. So I can't even take him on. So why try? And I feel like if she had been, like, fully in line with this philosophy, she wouldn't have given up there. She would have just kept fighting and probably died even sooner. But for whatever reason, she becomes a bounty hunter for a while, and then eventually meets up with Quinlan Voss, and then she teaches him the dark side a bit, and kind of tries to get vengeance on Dooku again, which doesn't work out so well when she gets killed there. And if you don't know, this is from the book Dark Disciple. You should definitely read it. I should clarify, not all of this is from the book Dark Disciple. A lot of it is. So you should definitely read that book. It's a great book. I don't know. Just good book. Definitely read it. Get it on Audible, Libby, something like that. Listen to it. Get it from the library. And have fun. Enjoy Star Wars. It's a fun series. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to mention about the Sith philosophy. I can't think of anything else. I feel like there was something I wanted to say. but I can't think of it right now. So maybe I will leave a comment and pin it or something. I doubt it though. So leave your thoughts about that in the chat or leave it in the comments. And the next segment is going to be about Sith eyes. So if you're interested in the Sith philosophy, you might want to check that out as well. There should be a like clicky thing in the box that you click on and it takes you to the next video and a screen. That's what it's called. There should be one of those for those of you watching the video not live. But for those of you watching live, let's move on to the next segment, which is why are Sith eyes yellow? So I'm sure most of you know the Sith eyes. If you look at Anakin there, his eyes are like a nice golden orange with red tinges. You look at Maul, same thing. And then Sidious, same thing. And Dooku, I'll get to that in a second. So yeah, basically this is, for whatever reason, a lot of Sith have these like golden colored eyes. And I'm like, you know what? I can do a quick segment on this. And this video is probably not going to be long. Those of you watching live, you don't know how long it's going to be. It's probably going to be like 5 or 10 minutes. But those of you watching the video, you know how long it's going to be. It's a pretty short video, I'm guessing. But yeah, Sith eyes, they're yellow. Primarily, the reason they're yellow is because it looks cool. Let's be honest, it's a movie. However, I'd like to talk about when they would turn yellow, like what triggers it. So if you look up at the top right picture there of Mr. Count Dooku, lovely chap, his eyes are not yellow. They are a very distinct brown. Pretty standard eyes there, not anything weird. So why is that? Why are his eyes brown? And then also, there are also other instances of this. Anakin, sure, there's a picture of him with his yellow eyes there, but most of the time, his eyes are, I believe they're blue. Anyways, they're not Sith eyes. Then there's Darth Sidious, and for most of the prequels, he's sitting there as Palpatine with not yellow eyes. And why is that? Lastly, I want to discuss Maul real quick. His eyes are always that color. However, so are the rest of the Zabraks, I believe. So, maybe we can't really use Maul, basically, because the rest of the Zabraks have the same eyes as he does all the time. I believe. And if I'm wrong about that, leave a chat, leave a comment. I'm totally fine being proven wrong. So yeah. So let's talk a bit about Anakin. When do his eyes turn yellow? They turn yellow. Hang on, I'm lagging out of this. I believe they turn yellow when he's killing the Mustafar leaders. Yes, I remember. He turns and like looks at Wat Tambor, and like you just see this glare, and it is super intense, and I love it. And it's one of the reasons I love Revenge of the Sith is because that scene is so cool. So yeah, when he's killing the Separatists. So let's look at how he's feeling then. So he just became a Sith. He just betrayed the Jedi Order. He just betrayed the Chosen One prophecy. He betrayed Obi-Wan. He betrayed like so much of his stuff. But he did it to save his wife. So he believed that it was, at least in the moment, he believed it was worth it. But the point is, he sacrificed a lot. Then he gets told to go kill the Separatist leaders, who have been causing this giant problem called a war. So he goes in and he just slaughters them just utterly mercilessly. And you can kind of tell from his expression and his body language, he's fueling himself with his anger. He is no longer worrying about like the dark side is bad and don't be bad and you're a Jedi, so don't do that. He is fully given into the dark side, and I think that's the primary reason why he's so upset at the Separatists, but I think that the Sith eyes kind of, for him, represented hatred. Then there's Count Dooku, or Darth Tyrannus. His eyes actually do turn yellow at some points. I'm blanking on when it is. I believe one of the times is when he like is covering up the all the information about how he bought like the clone army and stuff. Because Obi-Wan and Anakin were actually getting pretty close to discovering a whole bunch of stuff. Like they were on the Pike planet meeting with the Pikes. The Pikes had shot down Sifo Dyas' ship for Darth Tyrannus, and Darth Tyrannus is Count Dooku. So, and of course they knew that Darth Tyrannus is the one who hired Jango Fett to be the clone army template. So they could have pieced together, oh, well that means that Sifo Dyas didn't place the order. It was Count Dooku pretending to be Sifo Dyas, or some other, whatever the truth of the matter is. They would have figured it out, and then from there they would have more loose ends that they could track down, and I kind of, I guess, trace it back to beyond Count Dooku, but perhaps even to Sidious, and that would be no good. So Count Dooku gets sent to take on Obi-Wan and Anakin, kill basically anyone who has information, and he does that. And I believe it's at that, somewhere in that fight, that he gets Sith Eyes. And I think the reason that happened is because, honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't even, maybe he didn't even have Sith Eyes there. But it's a cool story nonetheless. If I were to speculate, and please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about any of these instances of Yevo Eyes, of any of these sightings, but I believe there would be, he's kind of, for once, demonstrating his true colors as a Sith in that moment, because, like, Obi-Wan is, like, figuring out, oh, this is Darth Tyrannus, it's Count Dooku. He is definitely a Sith, and he's definitely sinister, and all this stuff. And Anakin and Obi-Wan, they already knew, so he doesn't really need to hide from them. The Pikes already know he doesn't need to hide from them. So he's kind of able to let loose, and his covering up information, he can cover up a little bit more. So it's not like he has to worry about this getting out. Whereas the rest of the time, he's leading the Separatists as a political leader. He can't be like slaughtering groups of Tusken Raiders. Like, he can't be killing children. He's got to keep up his appearances as a good politician who's going to be good and righteous, I guess. So this is like some of the only times he gets to, I guess, show his true colors and be a Sith. So I think that's why he was able to demonstrate his yellow eyes, not because he was feeling such strong emotion, but because he had suppressed it for so long. Then let's look at Sidious. And here's another idea is Palpatine is like if Palpatine had Sith eyes, that's a dead giveaway. So perhaps the Sith have control over when their eyes are yellow, or at least they can disguise them as not yellow eyes, which would explain Count Dooku's eyes as well. Then it's like, oh well, it's not just that he's got all this pent up rage that he's forced to hide. It's just that he always has this amount of rage, and he always has yellow eyes, and he's like, well, now I can show it, so I'm gonna stop hiding it, which should make some sense. Because yeah, there's definitely times where Palpatine is just like standing around and talking, and like he should definitely have yellow eyes if it's just based on your emotions or your mindset or what you're planning to do. So I don't know. I'm going to guess that you need both passion, like hatred, like Anakin is showing when he's slaughtering the Separatist leaders, and also that you also need to, or you also have the option to just opt out of the eyes, which would explain Palpatine. It would explain Dooku. The other idea is that Palpatine entirely is complete, like his entire face and stuff is completely, just a complete disguise, and that Palpatine's true face is the one you see, like after he gets supposedly burned by redirected lightning. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to consider about Sith eyes. So leave your thoughts in the comments or in the chat. Like, what causes Sith eyes, and what are your thoughts on them? Do they look cool or do they look ugly to you? I mean, I don't know. I've always loved Sith eyes. They just look awesome to me. Leave your thoughts in the chat or in the comments. So I think that's just about it for today. Um, I don't know. To those of you watching live, I do want to mention a few things, just like not content related, well, kind of content related, but like it's not content that I'm making. So you may have noticed last week I didn't do a stream, and that's because honestly, it's just I'm super busy, and 3 videos a week isn't really that. I guess it's not really good for anyone. I guess I wasn't enjoying making the videos that much, to where it was a good commitment, and not enough people were watching them to really convince me. And great, somehow I missed comments. Sometimes I hate YouTube. Or I suppose it's OBS in this case. Um, hey Jason, how's it hanging? Blue eyes are better. Yes, I'm guessing. Yeah. Chat broken? Yeah, chat kind of chat was broken. Um so yes, I'm gonna continue talking about this. So basically I've decided that I'm only gonna be streaming once every 2 weeks instead of once every week. Except next week I believe would be good to no, never mind. Once every 2 weeks. Um yeah. And that'll probably just I guess be better for pretty much everyone because honestly these videos get like no views. So maybe if I post them less, they'll get like I don't want to fill up people's subscription feed with too much stuff, and I'm already doing that a lot with the um like splitting it up into 3. It takes up a lot more room on the subscription feed, and it can get annoying. There's some channels that I'm subscribed to for the live streams, and it's like yeah I watched the live stream. I don't need to watch your like 10 videos that are like breaking it down, you know. So yeah, I've decided I'm going to do it only once every 2 weeks from now on. Maybe not from now on, but at least for now. So with that, I think I'm going to end the stream. That's weird. YouTube is telling me no one is watching right now. And I know for a fact 2 people are because Ruthie just chatted and I'm watching on my phone right there. YouTube is weird sometimes, especially live streams. Have a great night.